Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS for over 13 years now. My role is to look at the impact of data, AI and technology right across the built and natural environment, and with over 110,000 qualified members working worldwide right across the property life cycle through land, planning and development, construction, valuation, brokerage, building operations, building management, property management, building surveying. It's a very, very wide canvas upon which AI, data and tech is having a really profound effect. And indeed, our members also work across all the major asset types, whether that's land itself, residential, commercial, alternative assets, and indeed infrastructure. So once again, a very wide spectrum of assets that our members work on. And today I'm really happy to have Stewart Bailey joining me from virtual viewing. So welcome to the call, Stewart.
Hi, Andrew. Nice to see you.
Indeed. Well, before we get into the bits and bytes, it's always nice to have a bit of a kind of human element here. So it'd be great to hear sort of a bit of your backstory and a bit of the kind of origin story of virtual viewing.
I never quite know where to start with that one, because if I go back far enough, I'm a professional musician by trade, and then ended up in tech. I'll skip out quite a lot of the middle bit there, but I ended up buying and selling a little bit of property and becoming very frustrated with estate agents back in the day, where they thought if they could just get you to site, they'd got you on the hook. And then you would get there, drive around the corner and think, what have you done? So I conceptualized and created virtual viewing. Now, this was back in, the first idea came in 95, 96. It took us a couple of years to get the R&D together, and QuickTime VR was just launching. And actually really quickly, we ended up selling that business to Bright Homes. And then the internet came along and we did the web. I didn't really like the web so much. I wanted to get back into 3D and then condense it all down. We did a lot of 3D visualization, a lot of animations, a lot of work with marketing departments, construction teams. So it was never really getting the juices flowing. We wanted to be smarter than that. So underneath, we were busy beavering away at BIM before it was much of a thing, and actually creating intelligent systems to, one, make our job easier so we can visualize and create better, but actually always, I'd like to think, with one eye on the goal of where we are now, where we do have a world that cares about data, has now got AI, understands the value of data and why we should be using it. So, and it's cool because now we can be smart. We still love making the pretty animations and stuff, but the world of data is upon us, isn't it? And in a big way.
Indeed. And I know you particularly wanted to kind of talk about one of the tools that the platforms you develop now and the kind of value that has and who it helps. So could you tell us about this MiHub thing? And I think it sounds a bit rude, doesn't it? But what's the value?
That's okay. You can call my baby a thing.
Who can use it? What's the value? Because I'm always of the view that one can get excited about data and technology, but it's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. It's about customer journeys. It's about helping people do things more efficiently and better. So I'm really intrigued to hear what it is and what it does and the value and who that value is being delivered for.
Yeah, okay. So I'm absolutely with you on that. Tech, not for tech's sake. There's always got to be a why. And in fact, when we started virtual viewing, we had the slogan, technology tamed and trained. Because at the day, you weren't sure if your network was going to work or the printer would work or whatever. If you remember, a company called NTL had a bit of an issue with our technology tamed and trained logo, but that's a story for another day slogan. So MiHub was created because it became clear that there were all of these silos of data across the entire real estate program, across the RIBA, schedule of works, different silos, nobody talking to each other, nobody really overly interested in anybody else's part. And so with a bunch of my peers, we sat down and we thought, how can we get this data pulled together? And that's where MiHub comes from. And the MiHub stands for management intelligence. So it's actually giving the managers the intelligence on what's going on in their systems. So on their projects, sorry. So who wins from it? There are a couple of answers to that, and we're probably more. The efficiencies on having all of your data in one place allows us, for the marketing and the sales team, to make CGIs from the same reference point, the fly-throughs, the off-plan sales apps, all of that stuff. So there's a big money win there for the marketing teams. But the bit that I'm really interested in is you then end up with a digital twin with a really easy to use interface. And now with the advent of AI, one where you could say, what were my 5 biggest problems last year? Or even better, one of my 5 biggest problems going to be next year. And the system can go away and look at everything from the shipping receipts to the installation documentation, the manufacturing warranties, the lot, and look at the data and go, well, actually, do you know what? We think it's going to be, heaven forbid, the cladding or RICS or whatever. And we are now in a world where you can do that. And who's going to win with that then? Not only the people actually running the projects, but the CFOs on these big organizations will finally be able to know whether they really do have an asset or have they got a multi-million-pound liability sitting there because they didn't really know what was in it. And that, for me, is going to be the big win.
And given that you're addressing a lot of stakeholders across that property life cycle, who's kind of getting it? Is it the developers? Is it the construction firms? Is it people who are already occupying assets who think, well, we need to kind of retrofit some of this information? Or is it a mix of people and participants who are understanding why having this kind of real BIM model, which is beyond the geometry, it's all the documentation, it's all this other information that's important as well?
I wish I could say it's definitely these people that are getting it, because I could spend more of my day actually hunting, gathering, people that get it. I was at an event last week with the NLA, with the Westminster City Council, and it's clear they get it. They understand the value in knowing what's going on. We work with some development companies that are funded by pension funds. I know a lot of them are. And they get it because they can see how they can reduce costs for their end user. So I'm talking particularly around build to rent, PRS, student accommodation. Whereas if you can have all of this stuff digitized and ready for people to consume, they can massively reduce their running costs. And probably the biggest increase for us in the last 12 months has been the property managers, GFM guys, the building managers, who we can, because you think our industry has gone from maintenance schedules to planned preventative maintenance, and now we can give them data-driven maintenance, where you're not thinking, oh, I need to do this because I think that's what it said. You can look at all of the metrics. You can actually look across the metrics on multiple sites and say, this is when your lifts are going to fail, or this is when we think the escalators are going to break. And that's, I can't say much, but in the next 6 months, there's a massive industry first coming.
We'll catch up at a later date on that one. I mean, I think you've already mentioned the phrase AI, and obviously it's almost impossible over the last 2 years not to kind of bring this into a conversation unless you've been sort of living off grid somewhere. I mean, I presume you're using AI to some extent within your applications. I'll be interested to sort of hear a couple of things from you, one of which is the degree to which you're kind of leveraging AI in its various flavors, and perhaps a more broad question about how you see AI helping the built environment, because obviously it is such a topic of interest at the moment, but clearly the sector needs better data. It needs to understand where AI will bring value and perhaps where it won't. So I'm interested to know, well, A, how are you using it, and B, what are your views on AI and how it's going to help the sector more generally?
Big question. Thank you. So there's not a single part of our business that hasn't been touched by AI. To be fair, we've been in AI, machine learning for years, but the AI, as most people think of AI now, we use it across everywhere from time management through to CGI creation, through to coding reviews. We run a lot of the code that we produce through the AI machines to get coding hints and tips and bug fixes before they even occur. So it's been a big change for us, big efficiencies. For the market as a whole, I think what's going to really change, I think, AI is probably, I think, going to be the most divisive technology that we've seen in our lifetime, more than the mobile phone, more than the computer. You are going to have this group of people that are AI enabled, whose jobs and lives improve because of the AI, and you'll have a whole raft, unfortunate people that I've coined the phrase AI suppressed, So those who are actually having the AI pushing on them, controlling their lives, controlling their workflow and what they are doing. And I think if managed sensitively, that could be a great thing, because I mentioned earlier about an array of data. Just if you're a property holder or a landlord or whatever, and you've got 200 or 300 buildings, you may have to have 200 or 300 building managers for each one of those, one each. You could now be using the system to spread the load. You could have 20 building managers looking after 100 buildings because the AI is doing the predictive analysis on it. We should be able to make buildings safer. We should, I hope, be able to change the relationships we have with our buildings. We should be able to develop almost one-to-one relationships with it. I laugh with people about the fact that when I come home, with the advent of AI and big tech, why shouldn't it be that my Fitbit's been managing my heart rate, my Siri's been listening to my phone call, they know I've just had an argument with my boss, they know the wife's been giving me a hard time as well, and when I come through the front door, the lights are all blue, Mozart is playing, and this picture is a picture of the dog. Something soothing. Yeah. We laugh, but it's totally doable. I mean, Alexa has playlists. We can do all of this, so that it could be great. It really could make home more homely.
But I suppose that the message is that, particularly for the built environment, we've got to get our heads around this and embrace it and understand how to implement it, if I can use that phrase, rather than having it imposed on us, because it feels like, excuse me, we need that agency of deciding how to use it. And as you say, there will be an effect on certain job roles, but it does feel that the sector does need to get its head around it, to use that vernacular, and really work out where the benefits are and be sensitive to the kind of changes it may imply.
And this is where I spend a lot of my time in talking with businesses about how do you want to deploy tech? How do you want to deploy AI? Let's go forward 5 years. How do you want your residents, your tenants, your workers, whatever? How do you want them to see you, and how do you want them to be working with the building? And that's where we've had to work at looking across all of the different stakeholders, because everybody's got a different requirement. And then it's planning that, because you're right. If we don't get a grip on it as real estate thought leaders, as the designers of the built environment, then somebody else will. And you don't probably want Facebook to come along and decide this is how your building is going to operate, or whatever. Meta. A horror story recently. We were doing some brainstorming, and on the flip side of the house looking after me all very nicely because I'm in a bad mood. Imagine if you sat at home and the TV goes off. And you think, well, what's that all about? And the AI tells you, well, you've got to be up in 6 hours, you need to go to bed. So you go to the fridge is locked, and the AI says to you, you've had enough, go to bed. I mean, that sounds very dystopian, but yeah, we already have a world where people are key tracking workers to make sure remote workers are working properly. It's coming to a building near you soon, and we need to be the architects of the future rather than the AI suppress where it's fed onto us. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time talking to companies about how they want to look at the strategy of deploying.
Well, it's fascinating you mentioned those things. I do remember being at a conference before COVID. I think I was in Singapore or Hong Kong, and they were talking about a very smart residential development, and it did talk about how it monitors you in your sleep. And one of the delegates did put their hands up and said, "Can I turn that off, please?" There is this level of sort of tech imposing or intruding on one's lives. I suppose one of the sort of interesting things that I'd like to kind of probe you on as well is obviously MiHub is around getting data into one place and turning BIM into a true BIM, which is not just the geometry, but all those documents, all those pieces of information about a particular asset. And obviously there's very huge benefits of having all that data in one place in a consistent way. But I guess initially one thinks about doing that for a particular benefit. Have you seen some other real upsides about once you have that data in place? Presumably it supports lots of other things that you can do that perhaps weren't front of mind when you thought, well, let's build it for this reason. We can see these issues. These are the particular things we'll want to use it for. But I guess once you have that data in one place, it opens up these other use cases, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Andrew. And that's one of the things that I still find most fun about the job. Even though we're future gazing, we've got the crystal ball out, we don't really know what it is we're going to be wanting to do with this data. we need to make sure that we handle it with care. And we see it now where we create, say, home user guides for somebody. And then we had a client mention us recently, so, well, actually, most of my tenants' English isn't their first language. Can we have it in multi-languages? Well, yeah, of course. So much easier than when you have to retype it and get things translated. Of course, we can do that. And then, well, if we've got that and we've put in all of the other information about the building, could we give it to the blue light services? So when they get here, they've got all the information to have it. Yeah, of course, we could do that. And all of these lovely use cases come out. I mentioned about we need to be sensitive how we use the data. For many years ago, and for a while now, we've been working with the counterterrorism office, and we need to be so careful about protecting this data. You imagine you have all of the information on a building in central London, all in one place. That's a big part of us needing to be sensitive to make sure that we can keep a control on who owns the data and how we can access it.
Indeed. Well, as ever with these conversations, I usually end up with the hardest question to ask anybody, which is sort of, as you say, getting a crystal ball out and looking at the future. And you certainly talked about a few examples of what you foresee. But, when we think that the built environment is still on quite a long journey in terms of digitizing and doing the kind of things that we've been talking about, what do you see in the next 5 years or so in terms of what is practical and what people are going to start doing that they aren't doing at the moment?
We will have these relationships with our buildings. You will be able to, from smart bulbs or smart TVs or whatever we're doing now, you will start seeing much smarter relationships with the buildings. I have, it won't be in the next 5 years, but with some of the advances in DFMA and MMC, you can see where you could have apartments where they can reconfigure themselves. And if you want to have a bigger living room for the Christmas Eve party or whatever, you could actually do that, and that could all be done. That's not necessarily not AI, but certainly within the tech of our industry. And I would like to think we will use it to actively manage carbon, and actively manage the health and safety of our residents. There's been a damning report that's come out in the last 2 weeks. I don't want to flag it up for anybody unnecessarily. But so much of that could have been avoided if we'd had data. And we've got to be focusing on the safety of our residents with all of this data we're going to have.
As you say, I mean, it has been perhaps an Achilles heel of the sector for many years that we haven't treated data with respect, have we, in the sense of the quality of it, the ability to share it. You talked about some of the confidentiality issues. It's always that balancing act about sharing it between participants who have the right to see certain data sets, and it is a balance. But I think we've certainly erred on the direction of not curating, to use the posh phrase, data very well about our assets, have we?
Well, as we saw in this report that come out, not only were we not curating it, we were falsifying it. Our industry, I don't want to get shot down at the end of hopefully quite a positive interview, it's shockingly bad at some of its own housekeeping. We've been well behind the curve on tech for years, and we're still well behind. I remember showing a friend of mine had just come out of the rally car environment with a company called ProDrive. You remember those? And he could not believe it. This was 10 odd years ago, when I said to him that, no, we don't have a single model of the building. He said, no, you are joking. We've been designing cars like this for 10 years. And we're still not there. We still don't have BIM level 3, do we?
No, I suppose the irony is, it's a sort of an analogy I use quite often, and perhaps it's to a degree unfair given the one-off nature of so much construction and the built environment. When you think of the rigor and systems they have around aerospace and, as you say, motor manufacturing, albeit in a more controlled manufacturing environment, which is perhaps where MMC will take us.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you know, you can track components through, you've got batch traceability, you have goods in, you have that real kind of quality control. If it's aerospace, spare parts arrive in a sealed plastic bag with all the seals on, and you know what you're putting into your aircraft for obvious reasons. And whilst I think the built environment does have a challenge to be anywhere near that, given the nature of it, we do have to aspire to a better way of controlling materials and data around them, don't we?
Absolutely, 100%, Andrew. You're right. Yeah, we build almost one-off all the time, whereas a car, once they've designed the BMW, there's a million of the same thing that come out. So they are worlds apart, but you're right, we need to aspire to at least get part way to that journey, so we have more rigor around what it is we do.
Exactly. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation, Stewart. Thanks for taking the time, and let's catch up in not the too far distant future to see what kind of announcements you can share with us about the next steps.
I
But
look forward to
today,
it.
Stewart, absolute pleasure. Thanks for taking some time out of your day, and I look forward to catching up again.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. You take care. Good to see you again.